love Naples. I love Collier County. And over the course of my many years here, I've had the incredible experience to understand what makes us the best place in America to live. And let me tell you, it's not just our beaches. Far from it, actually. It's our people, and it's our partnerships. And none of it's happened by accident. I've seen it time and time again. The more people learn about what's happening in our community, the more they come to the realization, this is not happening where I come from. Collier is special. Collier is unique. That's why I'm bringing you Community Matters. Think of this as your Collier County 101. I'm your guide, introducing you to the people and the resources that I think that you should know through short, real conversations so that you feel more empowered and ready to engage in ways that will positively impact your life, your family, your careers, and this beautiful place that we get to call home. Because community matters. Hi, I'm Amanda Pearson and welcome to Community Matters. Today, it's my honor to be with local, beloved chef and community leader and someone who I'm honored to call a friend, Brian Roland. Welcome.
Hi, thank you so much, Amanda.
Thank you for being with us today. Today's going to be a little different than what I normally do. I'm calling it a little bit of a special edition because we have a lot to talk about.
We sure do.
There's just so much. And so I want to start, in case people have been living under a rock, I want them to know a little bit about who you are. So forgive me for reading some of these amazing notes from your very acclaimed biography here. But you and your wife, Nicole, own the hospitality powerhouse Crave Companies. It's a family business, family of culinary brands that includes Crave Event Staffing, Crave Management Group, and Crave Culinaire, which most are familiar with. You were born and raised in Princeton, New Jersey. You're a graduate of the Culinary Institute of America in Hyde Park, New York. You have all the certifications in the culinary world and have worked with many well-known chefs. You've worked as an executive chef in top kitchens locally, including Chops and M Waterfront Grill. And you've also had the opportunity to cook for several celebrities, but you're also one of our local celebrities. You are incredibly engaged in our community, and that's what makes you very special. You've served as an MC for nonprofit events, and you've been recognized by many, many local media outlets, including 40 Under 40 by Gulf Shore Business, Local Hero with Naples Illustrated, Best Chef for Charity Gulf Shore Business, Gulf Shore Life 2017 Man of the Year, and many, 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 many more. But I'm also going to highlight, in 2011, you were Gulf Shore Life's hottest eligible bachelor. But sorry, ladies, he is taken by the lovely Nicole. But your philanthropic contributions have touched thousands, and you've raised money for our community outreach in many ways, and you've assisted several dozens of nonprofits in this community. So that's really where I want to start. I think that, you are so special to this community, and I think that it is your engagement in the community that has set you apart. You truly care. And anybody who has met you, this is why people are drawn to you like a magnet. You truly care, and it's evidenced by your actions with your business, and it's evidenced by how you treat people, and it's evidenced by so many other things. So why do you do that? Why have you chosen to run your business and live your life in that way? It might sound like an obvious question, but not all do that.
Yeah, well, thank you for that wonderful intro. It's interesting to answer a question like that because I don't really think about that when I'm doing these things. This has just been something that's come natural for so many years to me. And I revert all the way back to when I was executive chef at Chop City Grill. My primary goal, as I was just out of school, I was starting to learn what this community was about. I was starting to understand how I was going to articulate food, my passion through food. And, having the graduate degree from the Culinary Institute of America, I had a big shoulder, I had that on my shoulders, right? So I had big shoes to fill, and I was nervous. I was young. I didn't really know what I was doing at that point. I remember getting very emotional, thinking, here I am, a sous chef at a restaurant, and I'm now managing people that are twice my age, and I can't really teach them too much yet. So I had to learn how to earn their trust. I had to learn how to prove myself in ways that would allow for me to hopefully help them recognize that I'm in their corner as much as I would like them to be in mine. And so I think that process early on was something that taught me a lot, and it helped me recognize what being a good person is all about. And I think it kind of spiraled up from there. And so we started getting accolades in the community. We started getting recognition in the community as a restaurant, and as great culinarians and who could build an experience that people loved. And I got a headhunter found me, and I'm sorry, the owner of Crew at the time hired me to go up to Crew. I got to go to the James Beard House with them, do some amazing things with them, but. And then when the headhunter found me to go down back to Maxwell's on the Bay, which I converted into M Waterfront Grill, it became more community focused. They were in the community for 20 plus years. We were kind of reinventing the wheel for them and making a whole new impact on the community. And I remember it vividly. Chef Harold from Harold's up in Fort Myers, great friend of mine, super talented chef. He invited me to do the Naples Winter Wine Festival, or this was the Southwest Florida Food and Wine Festival, and there was a big event. And that experience changed me. I thought to myself, these are the types of people that enjoy what we do, that I enjoy rubbing elbows with because they appreciate good food and wine, they appreciate good service, and that was what I had spent my younger years, learning and trying to perfect. So I had this new vision that I want to be able to do these amazing dinners, these in-home dinners, as my business. I didn't want to have to work for a restaurant anymore. I loved working for all the places that I worked, and 15 years in the business in restaurants before I opened up Crave. But as soon as I made that decision, and I talked to Nicole about it, this was actually right before we got married, a couple of years before we got married, and I said, I think I want to make a business out of this. What do you think? Like, let's run some numbers. Let's see if we can do it. She said, all right, I'm keeping my full-time job. I don't want to, until you can realize whether or not you can make a living out of this. And so we took that leap of faith and did it. And that, I think, is when I was able to connect with people on a whole nother level. It really became more about what I can do for them. And it was sometimes outside of food and beverage. It was sometimes just being there for them. It was sometimes, and I think this is where it really started was, we were doing smaller dinners, but then we would have a client who might have been on the board of one of the charities in town and said, hey, we've got a luncheon for 75. Is that too big or can you do that? And I mean, my team and I, we talked it over. Yes, we can do it. So the next one was, I'm chairing this gala. Can you do it for 150 people? And so we made it happen. So as those started to line up, the ask for a donated dinner was something that became pretty fluent. And in the beginning, as most early on entrepreneurs do, you focus on how can I get my business's name out there? I want to be able to grow. What is it that I can do to get our name more well known? So I remember our first 2 auction dinners that we contributed, that we donated, they were in front of 200-300 people. And I thought, wow, I don't know what this is going to raise. And I think the first one raised like $1,000, $1,200 maybe for a dinner for 8. And I was like, okay, $125 a person. That's respectable, for where I was in life. And then it just kind of kept growing from there. And we had a really cool experience on Restaurant Startup on CNBC. And not to get into all those details, but it kind of catapulted our name in a lot of ways. And now the charitable dinners were raising $5,000 a piece, $8,000, $10,000. Then they were splitting them in auction and, trying to outbid one another. And you would go from one dinner at $10,000 to now splitting it and doing 2. They would ask me, would I donate a second one? Absolutely. So now we're raising $20,000. And I remember not too long ago, we raised $110,000 in like 15 minutes, splitting a couple of dinners. It was one of the most overwhelming, emotional, grateful moments for us because all along our intentions changed from how can we get our business name out there to how can we raise as much money as we possibly can for these charities, because now we can seriously make an impact on their cause. $100,000, $50,000, $20,000, even $10,000 in some charities can make a huge impact, whether it's helping children in need, helping someone with disease, helping someone who's gone through some life struggle, whatever it might be. These funds that we're able to help raise, it's amazing what kind of an impact it has. So that's become the why. That has become the why. And I recognize now that as much of a impact it's making, that it's the relationship we're building with the community that I think fuels us to do more. I love this community more than anything. There have been a lot of opportunities where we could have left and moved somewhere else. You know, who likes the summer heat? I mean, let's be real. But I think because we're so seasonal here, we go through the ebbs and flows of what this season looks like or what this year looks like here in Naples and Southwest Florida, and it's the community that just keeps me planted. I don't want to move from here. I want to continue to dig deeper, and especially in my life now and today. And I know we're going to talk about a lot. I have a whole new purpose, I think, in life in general. So I hope that answers your question.
That very much answers my question. And you and I have not discussed this before, and so that was really educational for me. And I love that. And I just want to reiterate too. Well, first of all, gosh, how much I can only imagine. Have you ever done the math on how much money you have personally? Who knows? Who knows how much money you've personally raised to give back to our community just through your donated. I can only imagine. So that's significant. So on behalf of all of us who have benefited, maybe not personally, but our community and those that are here with us, thank you for all that you've done.
Well, I appreciate that, but like I said before, it's really for no other reason than just to give. And I'm a big people person. I love to be in contact with people a lot, and those relationships are super special to me. And so part of what I do in my career is, our goal is to put a smile on people's faces. We do it through food and wine and great service. But the nuts and bolts of it is just putting a smile on someone's face. And that outreach, that contribution puts a smile on thousands and thousands and thousands. So I appreciate that.
Well, and this is all a part of it because you are beloved in this community, and that's why. And so we're going to start to talk about some of the things that occurred. So, okay, you have built this incredible business. Things are, you're on the cover of magazines like crazy, and, you're connected and engaged with our community, and we're all watching along as you and Nicole fall in love and have this beautiful fairy tale wedding, and it's so exciting. And, you're ready to start your family. And that is when you face your first kind of blow, your big, moment where it's like, wait, it's not happening. And so I remember that's when Nicole and I first connected she and I were discussing our shared journey of infertility, which is a tough one, which is a really hard one. And actually that's kind of the first trauma right there that you and Nicole go through together. Can you share a little bit about that and how that impacted you first?
Absolutely, yeah. To your point, everything seemed to have been lining up. Finally we got the business to a place where we had dreamed. Just got married, which we had both wanted to do for quite some time, and we opened up Venue Naples, our first event venue. We bought a house. It was like boom, boom, boom. Everything was just lining up, and and of course, stress comes with a lot of that, but overall, we couldn't have been happier. There were so many things to be grateful for. And, and things were just happening. And I was used to working hard to get to an end result. We set a goal, we achieve the goal. You set a goal, you achieve the goal. Okay, now the goal is let's have a baby. We're ready. We're finally ready. I remember we told my brother and sister-in-law, we were at Disney, and we finally said okay, guys, we're finally ready, because they had one daughter already, and they were waiting for us to have their second so that she could go along in the pregnancy journey with my sister-in-law, Andrea. And I remember telling them, everyone was so excited. I think they got pregnant like an hour later, and the most fertile people I know. Yeah. And then we started our struggle, and it took us, I think, our first year to actually finally get pregnant. And then we had our first miscarriage, which was the most devastating thing that either of us have ever endured. And, and I get emotional just thinking about it, because it was our first goal that we couldn't reach. It was the first thing that's out of our hands. It was our first thing where we would look up and say, why? we're great people. We try so hard in everything we do. Like, what can we do better to try harder here to make this work? And so we kept trying. We don't give up. That's what if you know Nicole and I, we do not give up. We do not give up. We try until we can't try any longer, and then we keep trying. And so year two, we kept at it. Doctors were running tests trying to figure out what it was that was stopping us from being able to keep the pregnancy. We had our second pregnancy. This one went a little bit further, and we thought, okay, we're finally there. This is great. Another miscarriage. That's number 2 in 2 years. I don't remember if it was that one or the third one. I think it was the third one where we were just coming into, I think, COVID, and hospitals were way different. You couldn't go into the hospital with people. You were basically just dropping them off at the curb. And we had, she had some pain, and we went up to the hospital, and they notified us that, they did the scan, and they couldn't see it, and said, it's got a heartbeat, but we can't see it. This was an ultrasound. And they said, you have an ectopic pregnancy, which, for those of you that don't know, it means that it's actually embedded in her fallopian tube. And the only way to fix this is to remove the fallopian tube. So we had an hour to gather our thoughts, grab some things from home. I drove her down to NCH, dropped her off at the curb. I waited in the parking lot. It was heartbreaking. I mean, I think more so for me not to be able to be there next to Nicole. She was like alone in there. And but in addition to that, this is now our third miscarriage, and I think most impactful because of now she had to endure surgery. And now we look at what are our chances moving forward, because now it's every other ovulation we have a chance, because she doesn't have the second fallopian tube. So it was a lot. It was a lot. I think emotionally, Nicole was kind of, she was at her wit's end with it, but we didn't want to stop trying. I remember, I think it was actually, that was the second one. I think the third one was when the hurricane hit in the Bahamas, and we had opened up Venue Naples to be a donation center. We had tractor trailers coming and hundreds of volunteers helping us load them so they can go over to Miami and fly over. And I remember going to her OBGYN, finding out that she had a miscarriage, and both of us going to Venue and bawling in the office. And then I had to pull myself together to get out there and be a positive shining light in one of the most emotional and hardest times for me. So anyway, we took a little bit of time. We did a little soul searching. And then I think something that we had already been talking about was, all right, well, what's the next step? Is IVF an option? What is, that's extremely expensive. We didn't have, $40,000, $50,000 to just dump into something like that. There's I guess, first step into that, an IUI. Not to go through all the details, but it was something that we opted to try. It was maybe $800 to try. And so we did 3 of those. All 3 failed. And we finally said, let's just pray on it and see what God thinks, and is IVF the next option, or are we going to have to consider adoption? My aunt, who was my favorite aunt growing up, we're so grateful. Her Aunt Lisa is her name. She moved down here a few years ago, 1 street over from us. So when Nicole was going through all of this, she was an extremely important support for us, because she's had 7 miscarriages and actually has adopted 2 wonderful children. So we knew that it wasn't the end for us. We knew that we could still have a success story here, but we just didn't know what path we were going to take. So we opted for IVF. We did a lot of research, and it's a lot too. As you know, it's a lot. What Nicole had to do to her own body, and all the injections, and me having to go through a series of injections with her as well, because she, had to get behind her and inject in her backside. It was a lot. But again, praying a lot, a ton of community support. Her and I we bonded in a different way than we ever had before, because we had never really endured struggle like this. And I think doing it for 3 years, we were exhausted from it, but we had faith and we knew we had each other. And I think that was one of the most key, that was the most key part in what helped us stay strong. So grateful that in 2021, November, Nicole's birthday, November 8th, we went out with the family. She was extremely pregnant. We went out for Mexican food. And they always say that if you eat Mexican food, something
Yes.
spicy, that like you're going to go into labor. We're like, yeah, okay. We're laughing about it at dinner. 3:00 in the morning, she goes, Brian, I think my water just broke. I'm like, she always laughs about this. I jump up and I go, well, how do you know? She's like, if you come into the bathroom, you can kind of see. I'm like, so I'm the one freaking out now. And she's calmer than ever. And so anyway, it happened. It was a long pregnancy. She wanted to do it without an epidural, and we got a couple hours in, and she said, I don't think I'm going to make it. So we went that route, and our miracle baby was born, Remington Kate Roland, and she is the light of our lives right now. She's our rainbow baby. She has, she helped us survive a really difficult and challenging time of our lives. And so as you can imagine, our everything went into her. However, Crave was the busiest as ever. November is the kickoff season for galas. November 9th is when she was born. November 10th was the Naples Zoo Gala that we had catered for 6 years prior, and we were catering again. My whole team was prepared that I might not be available, but in my heart, I can't just leave them, right? So that was a tough decision, and one that I know Nicole will never forget. I think she still kind of holds me accountable for how she felt that day, which I fully respect and understand. But I had to leave and go and make sure the team was okay, and then I came back to be with her. So just a lot of change, I guess, is what I'm getting at from that day forward. We had planned to no avail, and just it never really worked out the way that we wanted from the day that our first miscarriage happened. So I think it opened us up to the ability to say, look, life is going to happen, and we're going to have to navigate through it and decide what we want to do when the moment happens and how we're going to navigate together. So yeah, I think a very unexpected time in our lives that ultimately resulted in a beautiful child, very healthy, and just the love of our lives, and here we are. Yeah.
So first of all, thank you for openly sharing and talking about infertility. Mm-hmm. It's a topic that I know is taboo for a lot of people, and I know that there's so many people that struggle with that, and including myself. Mm-hmm. This podcast is not about me today, thankfully. So,
but we should do one with you.
Maybe another time.
Should I host? Let's do it.
Oh boy, my journey. That's a whole nother thing. But yeah, but obviously we have connected over that many times, mm-hmm. and was so grateful to be able to connect with Nicole, and we both were able to support each other in little messages, and it was such a beautiful day when I did not know that it was a day after Nicole's birthday either. Yeah. That's pretty funny.
What a great birthday present.
Absolutely. So, all right. So it's November 9th, mm-hmm. and your miracle is born, mm-hmm. and season has started, and off you go. And you've just made it through your first long journey with trauma, and December hits, and maybe we'll just have you take it from there. So what occurred 3 weeks after Remy is born, where everything changed?
Forever,
yeah.
I just got chills saying that. I almost lost my life, and I remember that day vividly. December 4th, 2021. Leading up to that day, things were going so well. We were adjusting at home with Remy. Business was thriving. The team was stronger than ever. That day was a monumental day for us. We had the opportunity to do the polo match for the CSN, the Community School of Naples, during the day. 450-person double-decker tent overseeing this amazing polo match on a farm in central Naples. And it was perfection. We everything was great. The planners did such a great job. Our team did fantastic. And around 3 o'clock, we broke off two portions of our team. One went down to Port Royal and did a 150-person dinner. And the rest of our team went and did the 450-person grand opening of the Ferrari Naples dealership. This was our, I think, third event working there. And we had planned meticulously how everything was going to happen. We utilized their car lift, which transports the car from the first floor to the second floor, to bring all of our equipment and food that we needed for the second floor operation. Because what they had asked of us was to do catering and stations, action stations, and past hors d'oeuvres and stationed food upstairs and as well as downstairs, because they have a huge store, on 2 levels. So that was the plan. They had taught us prior how to use the lift, and not to get into all those details. We brought everything up. We set everything up. The event started. They instructed us to bring the lift downstairs and to put our second kitchen on that lift, which is something that we do pretty much every event that we have. We've got to set up a kitchen in an odd space. We're kind of used to it, unless we're in somebody's home, we're in a department store, we're in a field, we're setting up a tent somewhere. We set up our tables, we know exactly how the flow of service needs to be, and that's just how we do it. And it's easy. So we saw space. They, told us this is a space to use, and we did it, and no issues. So 9 o'clock at night, we've already started breaking down. We sent one of the trucks back to the shop already. And I had loaded one of the last loads into the car lift on the second level to bring one of the last loads of items down. I go in, they push the button on the outside, the door comes down. And I woke up a week later in the hospital. And from what I've learned, there was a gap at the end of the car lift, from the end of the platform to the wall. Somehow when the lift started, it jolted, and I fell through that gap. I hit my head from the second story. I hit my head on the wall where the housing for the motor for the car lift was. And that catapulted me down underneath. It basically shot me out down on the ground under the lift, directly under the lift. And that lift, a couple 1,000 pounds of weight, continued to slowly come down, and it came down and it crushed me. So immediately 911 was called, paramedics, fire department came. They had to pry me out. I guess they used a forklift of some kind to lift up the car lift itself so that they could free me from underneath it, from being pinned underneath it. They brought me immediately to NCH, and quickly NCH said, we don't have a trauma unit that's strong enough to be able to do what's needed for him right now. So they helicopter airlifted me to Lee Memorial. From there, it was a couple of weeks before I really knew where I was and what was going on. I had endured quite a bit. The immediate impact of my head hitting that motor and then landing on the ground, I had a brain bleed, bladder rupture. My femur had cracked, broken. My patella and my knee had broken. The way that my leg hit, it had caused nerve damage in my left foot and the majority of my foot in my Achilles area. Pretty much every bone in my body was either fractured or broken in some way, shape, or form. Facial fractures, ribs, hips, pelvic fractures, the bladder, burst, and a ton to my legs. And so the outlook was not bright. 3 weeks postpartum, Nicole is now trying to figure out, how am I going to care for my baby? How am I going to check on my husband, who's potentially not even going to be here with us much longer? How am I going to care for the businesses? I will tell you, the one thing I know she wasn't thinking about was how she's going to care for herself, because she's one of the most selfless people. She has such a heart and wants to be there for others in so many ways, which is what I love the most about her. And she did it. The community and our family and our closest friends, I think, is what got us through, what got her through that first couple of months. We had hired a doula to come and help be with us when I was still healthy and everything was great. We wanted to have her for about 3 weeks to help us at nighttime when Remy was, just getting used to feeding and sleeping and or not sleeping, so that Nicole and I could find some rest as well. And we had made the decision, I would say 3 days prior to this accident happening, that we were going to keep her for 6 months. Sorry, for 6 weeks. 6 weeks. And she agreed to it, and that was the plan. Well, 3 days later, this accident happened, and as soon as Amy, who was her name, found out about it, she said, "I'm dropping everything, and I'm here until you need me." That ended up being 9 months she stayed with us. So she was a huge support for Nicole, for Remy, and for me, because she was ultimately helping take care of me. Once I learned how to go up and down stairs again, she was there with the strap helping me walk, and helping me refill waters and helping me get up to go to the bathroom. And of course, Nicole was doing all of that as well. But I spent 2 months in the hospital. I had a lot of cognitive changes. The brain injury, the TBI they call it, the traumatic brain injury, there were some side effects that were starting to affect me in my speech, in my memory, just a lot of things that I just wasn't used to. And, I can tell you that all the while that this was happening, I knew in my heart that my passion was to be that people person, was to get out in front of people and talk about food and cook and all that. And in the earliest days of being in that hospital, I was so emotionally crushed, no pun intended, because I didn't think I was going to be able to do any of it again. I thought I lost my ability to do it all. I was torn up inside. And as positive of a person I have always been, glasses always half full, always super optimistic. For the first time in my life, I was scared. I did not think that I was going to be able to make the plan like I always do to get through this and make any changes that were needed to get back to who I once was. So, as you can imagine, just a lot of change, a lot to process for my whole family, for, Nicole in particular, and for me to, I was back to the basics, learning how to just sit up, learning how to eat again, learning how to go to the bathroom. This bladder injury had affected me in a lot of crazy ways. And we'll talk a little more about the brain health and the brain injury, because, when we talk about philanthropy and we talk about what an impact we have recognized to be able to have on the community and the things that we do, now that I have a cause that is so near and dear to a couple of them that are near and dear to me, that's where I want to focus a lot of my energy on. But this accident, I give so much to my family and friends, but also my team at all three businesses, because they kept things running and they kept, to the best of their ability, they kept the Crave name as high a standard as they know how without their leaders, because both Nicole and I weren't in the building anymore. And there was a huge change, I think, that started to happen, because I don't think they lost faith, but they just didn't have the direction at that time that they needed to be as successful as we've always been, and feel confident in what they were doing. So, it took about a year for me to start to feel a little more like myself. I had been working on my laptop a little bit and communicating with my leaders, but I really hadn't seen many people. I really hadn't spoken to many people, because some of the cognitive stuff I was dealing with affected my speech and it made me insecure. And that was not a feeling that I was very used to. I had insecurities, but not things that prevented me from wanting to sit in front of somebody and say hi, and that was just, it was a change that I was fearful that someone was going to recognize something in me that was going to make me an outcast now, or just not the same person. And I wanted to be known as the same person, because I liked the relationships I was able to build by being a good person. And so so a lot of changed for me, and to say the least. And not to mention, I had lost a couple of months of my relationship with Remy at that most pivotal time of her, existence in the beginning, just getting to build a bond and getting to build a trust with one another. They always say that the child typically will look like dad in the first couple of months, and God created it that way so that they can create a relationship with the child before it becomes mommy, 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 mommy. So we were in that, she loved daddy, and she still does, but she definitely has a heart for mom. But it was just a lot of change, a lot of pain, a lot of emotional and physical pain that we had to go through, and a ton of recovery. And I think that recovery is what's made all of us a lot stronger now. But I don't think we fully have the confidence knowing that something like this just can't happen again tomorrow.
And we'll get there.
Yeah.
There's more to this story, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So, okay. So a lot of people, someone just recently said, where was he was it 3 years?
Yeah.
3 years. So for you and Nicole, who are both so beloved and have been so open in our community about everything and sharing your lives with the community that loves you, and whether it was in person or on social media, you guys connect with all of us, and we love that, right? And so here's this accident. Everyone's like, there's vigils outside of the hospital, there's prayers, there's calls to action, and people are wondering, how is he? What's going on? What's the is there any is he alive? And there was nothing, and that was intentional. First of all, you both didn't owe the community anything. You could have stayed private for the rest of your lives, but I know that it's important to you both to connect with the community. So that being said, why did you have to? Can you just talk to us about the 3 years, which is incredibly significant to be very close for two very social, connected people? Why, and what kind of impact did that have on you?
It had a lot of impact. I think a lot of the reasons that initially that we chose not to speak up is because we didn't know truly yet. It wasn't defined yet what had truly happened to me. The doctors kept saying, this is where you stand today. However, there's a long path ahead of you. Your injuries are going to blossom into different types of injuries, especially regarding the cognitive stuff and the brain health. Physically, you can and can't do this today, but that's probably going to change over time. We don't know if you're going to be able to ride a bike again. We don't know if you're going to be able to run again. We don't know if you're going to be able to walk without a limp again. So a lot of this was unknown. And again, I think for a couple that up until the struggles with infertility, we were goal-oriented and we just were very hard workers, and we were loving and caring people. And, number one, why did this happen to us? Why? We kept having to ask that question. Why? What did I do to deserve this? I remember saying that so many times, still today. And I think we took a lot of that time to do a lot of soul searching to figure out, how can we live like this if this doesn't change, as an example, if that doesn't change, what are we going to have to do differently? How can we be the best parents for Remy if, Brian, you can't lift her ever again, if you won't be able to do the first dance with her at her wedding, or I can't walk down the aisle with her? I mean, there's so many things going through my mind. And I didn't know, and nobody knew. And the doctors, they had a short-term outlook, but they couldn't define it enough. And I think they did that intentionally because they didn't want to give me false hope. And being optimistic, I always tried to, okay, I'm going to get through this. I'm going to get through this. I'm going to get through this. And I even remember being in the hospital saying, like, the doctors, the physical therapist came to me and asked, what is it that you want to work on the most now? And I said, I've got to work on being able to get into a car so that I can drive home. And they said, okay, and once we can get you there, what is next? I need to be able to get upstairs because my bedroom, Remy's bedroom, everything's upstairs. You know, we live in a 2-story. So we rented a bed for a period of time that I kept downstairs just in case I couldn't, or I needed to rest or whatever. But anyway, so there was a lot of that kind of stuff going on. And I didn't, you know, I think in the beginning it was just to protect me emotionally. One of the things that Nicole said to me, and I think a lot of it came from this too, after the accident happened, my phone, the screen had gotten crushed, and the family had to hire a lawyer to represent us because we knew the absorbent amount of medical bills that were going to come our way, we were not going to be able to cover on our own. So we had to find a way to be able to get coverage for that. So it's unfortunate, but we had to go into a lawsuit with the insurance company versus their insurance company, and just try to raise, you know, those funds to be able to cover it. But at the time, Nicole and my lawyer, to protect me, told me that my phone didn't make it. You know, we don't have a phone yet. We're gonna have to try to get you another, you know. And they were protecting me from getting on social media, getting on Google, and seeing some of the stuff that had actually happened to me. Even though a lot of it was heartwarming when it comes to the community and the candle vigils and things like that, they were protecting me because they knew emotionally I wasn't ready for it. And so I think it was about a month before I had said to her, I'm like, I think I'm feeling a little bit better. Can I at least have my phone to be able to communicate to some of the people? Because all I wanted to do was say thank you to everybody. I kept hearing all these stories of this outpouring of love that people were offering, and I couldn't say anything to anyone. So they agreed to it, but she said, you have to promise me that you're not going to Google your name. Don't do it. I'm telling you, and here's why. And so I trusted. And I started to reconnect with just the closest of people and a lot of like my cousins and family that just were so worried about me, just to tell them I'm alive. You know, I'm a lot's changed, but I'm still me, you know, and I'm a fighter, and I'm going to get through this. So another month went by, and I woke up for breakfast one morning, and I just remember I said, okay, I think I'm ready. So I Googled my name, and the first thing that came up was the candle vigil, and I burst out into tears because I had never felt the connection to the community that I did in that moment as strong as I did in that moment. Because I've always given as much as I can. I'm not saying that that's a lot. I'm just saying I've given as much as I can. And again, seeing people smile is all I really want and care about. I've never asked for anything in return from the community. I've never needed anything in return from the community. And for this to happen, and them to just drop everything and do it because of the love that they have for our family and for our team. I mean, it was heartwarming, heartbreaking, just emotional. And I realized, I think, at that moment that that's a lot of the why. That is a lot of the why. It's being there for those that you know will be there for you too, just because you love, just because you have a lot of love to give, not because of anything more. And so in the beginning, a lot of it was because I was afraid. I didn't want to reintroduce myself to the community as a mangled, you know, incapable person that people wouldn't recognize anymore. I wanted them to remember me for who I was. So until I felt more like who I was, I didn't want to show face because I was scared. I was insecure. And these, you know, cognitive issues that were happening were causing my speech to kind of slur at times, and for me to not be able to say what I was trying to say. And Nicole helped me at one point. I was trying to decipher and explain what it was, and she helped me articulate that my brain was thinking faster than my mouth could speak. And so I knew what I was trying to say, but this weird rush of energy would come through my mouth. It would almost feel like, I would call it a mouth stutter, like a mouth spasm is what I would call it, because it was like this shake of energy in my mouth. Apparently people couldn't really see it, but I could feel it, and it was really difficult. So that was a huge insecurity of mine, and I felt like I wasn't ready. I just wasn't ready. Now, clearly when you're in a lawsuit and, you know, everything you do is being watched by the defense, and you've got to be very careful. There were so many things that I couldn't do. I couldn't lift Remy. I couldn't, I couldn't run. I could all these things. However, I was on this road to recovery, working 6 to 7 days a week with a physical therapist just to get myself back to as normal as I could. I needed to learn how to walk properly again so I could get rid of the walker, get rid of the wheelchair, all that. And so intentionally, I was trying to walk without walking assistance. I was trying to do as much as I can. My goal was I had to be able to lift Remy again. I had committed to Nicole that I was going to be the diaper changing guy. No matter what, I'm changing the diapers. Don't you worry. And 3 weeks in, I couldn't change a diaper again. In fact, I actually couldn't smell for a long time, which my taste and my sense of smell, because the frontal lobe in my brain was affected. I mean, talk about devastating. I was a chef, and all of a sudden, the two senses that are required to perform my job are now changed and not able to do what I needed them to do to be able to confidently cook and direct my team, right? If somebody were to come up to me and say, "Hey, does this taste right? Is this good?" I put it in my mouth and I'm going to feel textures. I'm not going to really be able to taste. So my sense of smell was a big part of it. And so, I think going through all of this change really led me to this kind of hibernation phase for me. And I remember going out, the two of us, to just do something with the family, whether we were just going to go to the plant store because Nicole became, she had a green thumb all of a sudden and wanted to like grow different types of plants and herbs. And I loved that too. And so we developed a little hobby there, and we'd go over to one of the nurseries. And it seemed like, as you can imagine, at that point, it was probably a year and a half to 2 years. But after not seeing everyone for so long and not really being able to talk and communicate to anyone for so long, when we go out into public, if we ran into someone, it was an amazing interaction, but emotional. And people would drop anything that was in their hands and run over to just embrace us, and, scared to embrace me because they didn't know if they were going to break me at the time. But, I think it was an important thing for me because I was able to start to feel the connection again. I had lost so much of what strengthens me with losing the interaction with people. I kept saying I was hibernating like a hermit crab for 3 years, and I need people in my life. So that, I think, started the path to recovering me socially and emotionally, was being able to see people again. And finally, I think we did this before the lawsuit had come to a close. We had posted a video for the Wine Fest, I believe it was. And it was Nicole and I, sitting on the couch with Remy. And it was Nicole introducing a package that we were donating. And she said, this just doesn't feel right without Brian. Would you like to hear from him? And then I entered the screen and took it from there. It was, I think it was a great moment for us to be able to say, like, hey, we're still okay. A lot has changed, and a lot will continue to change, but we're still here, we're still fighting, and we still love you all, and that's what I tried to say in that moment that I had. So, and from that day forward, it was just the fight to get better and the fight to figure out what the new normal is going to be.
Wow. So here we are, and I wish I could say that's where it ended.
Yeah.
I really do.
Me too.
So 2.5 years after your accident, you have another very highly traumatic family experience.
We do.
So, can you please share what happened?
Yeah. I remember I was working on something on the couch in the living room. Nicole had went into the kitchen. Remy was outside playing on the splash pad, no clothes, having the best 2-year-old moment of her life. It was a beautiful day out. We had bought her this cool little splash pad at the house, and Nicole went outside. She did something she's done 50 times before, brewing hot water in an electric urn, or water heater, and then we had this large mason jar where it had that tube in the center that you put iced tea leaves. You put tea leaves in to make iced tea. And you pour the hot water over it, it steeps, and then you pull out the vessel with the leaves, and then you store it in the refrigerator. She's used this container 40, 50 times, no issues. She was doing it again like she normally does. She had just finished brewing the water. She had picked up the water to get ready to pour it. And in comes Remy going, "Mommy, Mommy." And she wanted to talk about something that she was doing outside. And Nicole says, "Be careful, Remy, stand back. I don't want you to get burned, or I don't want any of the water to splash on you." And Remy, being attached to Mommy at that time, she comes even closer. And in the moment that Nicole was able to say again, "Remy, step aside for a second," Remy went to turn to go away because she was listening. And as Nicole started to pour the water got up to a level, and the whole entire side of the mason jar burst out. One whole piece just exploded out and off of the mason jar. All the hot water came pouring out. It hit Nicole on her stomach, who had clothes on, so it didn't affect her as much, but she still has scars from it. And it proceeded to go all over Remy's head, neck, face, back, shoulders, and chest area. All I heard was a crash, a pause, and Nicole first start to scream, and then Remy start to scream. And I lift up my head and turn, and she comes running over to me, holding Remy in her arm, like by her hands. You could see the shock in her face. She didn't know what to do. I didn't know what to do. We're looking at each other like, and so I took the calm road. I had to be the calm one in the moment because Nicole, rightfully so, I mean, she was so overwhelmed with fear, and immediately I think felt like she had caused this. There was no way that anyone would have been able to prevent this. The side of this thing exploding the way that it did was a defect in the container. So she ran upstairs to get a towel. I grabbed one of the pool towels right there, and I had patted her dry just lightly, and already her skin was peeling. You could see it. Remy was in shock, and then the screaming started, and I think that was I kept saying to Nicole, I'm like, I don't care what I have been through. This hurt more. This hurt more. I said, I wish this pain was on me again. I don't want her to have to deal with this. And we had struggled so hard to have a child, and to now have this, after everything we had just been through, had to happen. Again, we're looking up going, why, God? Why is this happening to us? What did we do to deserve any of this? So we rushed to the hospital. They cooled her as best as they could with ice packs or whatever it was that they used, and they gave us the news that we never would have expected, and said, this burn is worse than it looks right now. We don't know if it's second or third degree. It's definitely first degree, but we don't have a burn clinic for children here that can help diagnose this and give her the treatment that's really needed. There's a specific place over in Miami that can, and that has the process that will help her heal a lot faster than we would ever be able to do. So that's what we did. We went into an emergency vehicle. I followed in my car. Nicole, it panicked, listening to Remy scream pretty much the whole hour and a half to 2 hours over, and they got her there. They were able to help her relieve some of the pain. They quickly came in, and after diagnosing what had happened, they said, this is going to develop now, because as the skin kind of goes through its process with burns, it goes through the bubbling process where the water in the skin is trying to surface, and then that'll either break the skin or cause a huge, blister. Those blisters sometimes break, and then scabbing starts. But there's things that you need to do during that process to avoid future scarring. So they deemed this to be serious enough to have to perform a skin graft surgery. So long story short, we stayed in that hospital, literally stayed in the hospital. I was, this is 2 years after my surgery, so I'm still dealing with my own pains and aches, and I'm sleeping on a chair, on a floor in this hospital. And it was tough on all of us. Nicole sleeping in the bed with her. And we got through it. 3 skin graft surgeries. They put an amniotic skin on her, which actually comes from placenta, and it's known to be the best healing agent for burns. And although she's not 100% today, this was, I don't know, a year ago now, her skin looks miraculously better. And she's just got this mark on her arm that goes up her arm and a little spot in her back. We did go over to Miami for a series of laser surgeries as well. She had, prior to this, had eye surgery also to correct something with her vision. So that little angel has been through so much, not just enduring what I went through and what mommy went through, all that, but her own set of tragedy. And, and I look at Nicole now and I think, how is she ever going to stand in her own two shoes and feel comfortable again that something like this is not going to happen? And it leaves just this level of insecurity. And I think that's what drew us the most to God during this time. And she had started working out with a group at Burn and loved the girls that she had connected with. And a couple of them had said, hey, we do a Bible study on Wednesdays. Actually, I think first they just invited her to go to that church, which we love, and then ended up asking her to come to Bible study. And she fell in love with it. And every week since then, she's been doing it. But I'd say a month after she had started going to this church, it's First Baptist, unbelievable church. You happen to know a little about it as well.
I go there as well.
Yes. Pastor Allen there, Pastor Thomas. I mean, they're just such great people, and the congregation is great. Just the message is great. And I think at a time when I had so much uncertainty and that I needed something more than just my own thoughts, Nicole had said, I think you'd really like it here. You should come. Other than being away on vacation, I haven't missed a Sunday since. Fell in love with it. In fact, my whole family now, for the most part, most of my family is joining us as well at that church. Nicole's family as well at that church. It's changed our lives. It's changed our outlook. It's given me strength. It's given the family strength. Remy goes to Sunday school there now. We're considering actually starting her at actual school there in the next year or two. But I think we found a community that was here all along. We just didn't know them at this level. And although most people that I pass in the hallways probably don't know who I am and what we as a family have endured, there are quite a few that do. And it's just a great way to continue to build our strength and our relationships with those people and others. And so, yeah, I think our path with God is, it's given us a little bit of a sense of calm in times that really in any other way would not. So
I can relate to that.
Yeah,
I can relate to that greatly, and thank goodness for that we both have that amazing resource that helps with both of our healings. But your journey is, man, I could sit here and talk for another hour, and I'd like to, but for our listeners, I'm trying to keep it to about an hour. But there's two last questions that I want to focus on, probably a little bit more briefly, just because.
Sure.
But the first question is, you have injuries. And some people, when they look at you, they think, he looks fine. Fine. Okay, so thank goodness for Remy's healing, by the way. Thank goodness. But can you share just a little bit? I mean, you have daily battles, you have hourly battles, and you have. So can you just share a little bit about where you are today? Maybe a little bit about what the future holds that we're going to fix, and then also just a little bit more about. We can wrap it up with. It is unbelievable to see how you and Nicole and Remy have been through unfathomable trauma in such a short period of time. I can't even wrap my head around it. I've cried a lot with you. I've cried during this interview quietly, and every time I see you, I feel like crying because I can't even believe that you're alive. And I just know all that you've endured, and it inspires me to see how you and Nicole and Remy are so positive and still committed to helping others. I can't get over it. So it's a two-part question. Can you share a little bit about what people don't see?
Sure.
That you battle, and can you share a little bit about, we can, close it with how are you all able to just make it through so beautifully? Because that's an inspiration.
Well, thank you for that. I think going through what we went through, our outlook on life changed a lot. And, I think, as I mentioned earlier, the doctors really didn't have a full view on what my life was going to look like from that day forward. And so a lot of it is kind of trial and error and learning as we go. And, as I started to see people and re-enter the community a little bit, I would get a lot of that same comment, you look great. I never would have been able to tell, and I used to joke, I'd say like, I had all these facial fractures and people are telling me I'm even more handsome now than I was before, just joking, trying to make light of it. But I normally would end it with, I appreciate that, but under these clothes, it looks a lot different than it once did. I've got a cut from my chest all the way down to the under my belly button from this bladder repair, that's an immediate bladder repair that had to happen. Thankfully, the brain bleed absorbed, so I didn't have to have brain surgery, but there are still a lot of after effects that affect me. With the surgeries that happened with the femur, the rod they put in my femur, and the repair on my patella, there's a lot of aches and pains, a lot of days when I wake up and I'm tight and tense and sore, and sometimes taking that first couple of steps, I think to myself, is this going to be a day where I'm going to have to sit a lot more, or is this going to be a day where I'm going to be able to stand? One of the longer term issues that I'm dealing with now, that I think I'm going to deal with for, at least the doctors say now, for the rest of my life, is the nerve damage in my left foot. That causes pain, sometimes sharp pain, sometimes dull pain, numbness in the foot, pretty much all the time. There have been some moments where I've felt a little bit more of sensation than I do at others. Doctors tell me that that's the nerves regenerating. It takes a long, long time for a nerve to get from the bottom of my foot up to my ankle again. And so I start to feel little bits of it as I go. But I think the nerve damage part, I think, is one of the hardest, because being on my feet is one of the most important parts of my career, right? Is standing in the kitchen. And I know I just can't do it. I can't do the events that I once was able to do. So that affects me in a lot of ways emotionally too, because in my heart, I want to be there. In my brain even too. Like, I want to be able to just get in the kitchen and just rock and roll with my team again and go out and do all these amazing events. So that's one of the bigger things. The brain injury, though, is one of the hardest ones, and the bladder repair. I'll speak to the bladder first. A year and a half after the bladder incident, the whole incident, I had no bladder issues. I was urinating, no problem. Like, there was no problem at all. And then one day I was watching TV with Nicole, and my entire abdomen just blew up like a balloon, and I had the most excruciating pain. To the point where I couldn't breathe, and I said, I tried to go to the bathroom to see if it was just gas or something from dinner or whatever. Getting a little too personal here. But we ended up calling 911, and they came, and the pain had just started to go away. They told me they could bring me in, but they actually did some tests for me there and decided everything was okay. 3 weeks later, it happened again. This time, called 911, rushed to the hospital. They ended up running some tests, and after about a half hour of dealing with this excruciating pain, they put a Foley catheter in me and drained about 8 liters of urine over the course of however long I was there. So I was retaining, and my bladder was not releasing the way that it should. So after a year and a half of every 3 months going back in the hospital for the same exact thing, coming out with a urologist telling me, we're going to try something else, but we still don't know what it is, I went to Johns Hopkins up in Maryland. I spoke with some people at a place that specializes in this in Atlanta, and ended up being told that I can either have surgery again, or I can let what they found was a tear in my bladder, a perforation. They could let it heal, so I'd have to keep a Foley catheter in for about 2 months. So that was life for me for 2 months. Not fun. Insecurities, talk about insecurities, right? I mean, I've got this leg bag now attached to me at all times, and I've got to empty the thing, and it was crazy. And so, I think going through that and getting out on the other side, after the incidents continued to happen, the urologist just said, I think we're going to have you start to self-catheterize. And so I started doing that once a day, had to then increase it to twice a day, then was able to decrease back down to once a day. And that's what I do now, and might have to do for the rest of my life. Embarrassing, very personal thing to talk about, something you would never expect would happen from an injury that I endured doing what I was doing, but life-changing. Totally life-changing, and something that's going to be with me potentially forever. And it's preventative now. It's essentially me knowing that right before I go to bed, I'm emptying my bladder enough to where I feel confident that I'm going to make it until the morning. And so far, praise God, knock on wood, it's been 8 months since I've been in the hospital. That's almost 3 times the amount of time that it's been between each of the other incidents. So I'm grateful, I'm hopeful. A lot of this I put in God's hands now, and He's given me the strength and the courage to say, I'm going to be okay, I'm going to make it, everything's going to happen the way it's supposed to. So the brain health stuff, the doctor had told me, the neurologist had told me at one point, he said, we took a brain scan of you the day that the incident happened, and then a year later, we took this new scan. I had to go to the other coast, and what they found was my brain was shrinking 40 times at the rate 40 times of what it should in someone my age and health. And because of that, they were seeing it was shrinking at that rate, and that means that your memory is starting to go as well. So he's told me in that moment that you have a 50% chance of having dementia at age 65 and a 100% chance of having Alzheimer's at 75. So now I'm staring down this barrel of life saying, okay, I've got 20 years. What am I going to do? How am I going to get through this? What am I going to change now that can help that? So brain exercises, doing things like Wordle and Sudoku, and like just trying to challenge my brain again, getting more involved in the back end of work to just help me process things again and feel confident in who I once was. And slowly I started to see progress. The speech stuff started to go away. I still have some short-term and long-term memory issues, but I'm also going to be 46 this year, so maybe it has something to do with that too. Yeah, the gray hairs are coming through a lot more. But now I'm thinking to myself, I'm not going to listen to what the doctor said. I respect what the doctor said, but I'm not going to believe it. I'm going to do everything in my power to make sure that I have more days on this earth to spend with Nicole and Remy and this community and my family. And that leads me to, I think an important part of this next phase of my life, which is connecting for a cause and just trying to contribute my experience and my, commitment to the community through what we do with Crave in a way that's going to help people that means even more to me because of the connection I have with the cause. And you and I started to talk quite a bit about, and I don't know if we want to talk any about that.
You're welcome to mention it. We're going to timestamp this day as August in 2025. So
I'll revert back to a conversation that I had with my lawyer who had also endured some of her own personal trauma in her life. She had found a way to help others by speaking at functions or charitable events or whatever it might be to help support those that were going through similar things that she went through. And she said, I've gotten to know you quite a bit in this last year and a half to 2 years. She said, I see a path for you that connects you with people in a different way than you've ever done. You're going to find a way through your experience, through your injuries, through the things that you've experienced in this journey to just speak about it and give people hope and help people realize that even though it's as hard as it is today, it's not always going to be that way. It doesn't have to be that way. And there's still a chance that you can reach the next stages of this challenge and get through it with people that care, with people that are, talented in their field. And so this whole David Lawrence connection for me, I think I told you right then, I was like, this is it. This is it. And you're like, well, what is it? I said, this is what I've been waiting for. I've been thinking about this for so long, and I've been waiting for the stars to align for me to see a cause and a mission that speaks to me, that I want to align myself with more. And there are so many in this community that I can easily align myself with, that I do in a lot of ways, but this one speaks louder, very loudly. And plus, I get to do it with you and with Kimberly Dye and with Scott and just so many great people that I just feel so right. So you're all on an amazing journey right now with breaking down their buildings and and building this amazing campus there that I am just excited to be a small part of. And I think with this brain health thing, it's so much more special to me. And you and I have already started to talk quite a bit. We've got a lot to talk about when it comes to this because there's so much that we can do.
So I just, gosh, there's so much here. What I'm hearing is that some of the ways that you have gotten through all of this sounds like your and Nicole's first and foremost ability to, fight through anything, no matter what. Second, your love with each other and your relationship and your strong foundation that you've built through trauma, which can make or break you.
Mm-hmm.
Your faith,
Mm-hmm.
which you had but has been so much more developed. Thank God
Yeah.
for all of us. And your encouragement to share your journey. So it's part of what you're doing. So part of why you're talking with me, and a part of why first of all, thank you so much for your connection and commitment to David Lawrence Centers. And, again, this is August 25 and October 25. People will know by the time this is shared that we have a special event with you and Nicole. We're going to be sharing more on stage, and the community can interact with you because the community loves you both. But the reason that you share, and the reason that I share openly about some things that I've been through, is to truly just to help others. And so I hope that people listening today feel just as inspired by all that you've shared, because at the end of the day, you, Nicole, and Remy are doing as well as you can be. You're smiling. You've been able to take vacations. You're working again, which is fantastic, and you're still, through all of it, committed to helping others, which is truly mind-blowing. So while I could chat for another hour, and maybe we will off camera, I just, on behalf of everybody here in Collier County and anybody who's listening, just want to thank you for sharing, and thank you for all that you've done over the many, many years for our community. I can hardly imagine what that would be just if I were to sit down and try to quantify that, and all that you continue to be committed to doing, even after all that you've been through. So just thank you so much.
Thank you, Amanda. That means the world to me, and having friends like you that we connect with on many different levels, it's in a lot of ways is what life is all about. God gave me a second chance at life, and I want to use every moment of it to build a stronger connection with Remy, with Nicole, for our little family, but just continue to help people and build relationships and strengthen our whole community in any way that we can. And the community's proven to me that they've got my back through all of this. And I'm more than appreciative of that and grateful for the whole process. So thank you.
Thank you. And I'm going to cry through this one with tears in my eyes for my closing this time, but I hope that everybody listening and watching today will find a way to engage in the community the way that Brian and Nicole have done for so many, because community matters.